Hello everyone! So, on Monday, I leave for Mexico. On Monday, this Monday, in a week, I leave for Mexico. But that's not the reason why I'm making this vlog. This vlog is to give you a background of who I am, where do I belong, where do I identify myself as, my story pretty much. So, when I was little, my parents came to the United States. I'm 23 now, so 22 years ago I was 1, and my sister was 6 months. I don't remember much, but what I do remember is my grandma having half a door. I remember a beautiful, big, huge tree with like leaves coming down, like a willow tree. And I remember my grandparents, one of my grandpa's mustache, which was really, really, really white, like really white. I remember bits and pieces of crossing the border. Like I remember being, I don't know if it was the desert or I don't really know much of that, but I do remember being in a ditch, and I remember my mom telling us to be quiet, and like there was I don't know if it was immigration services or officers shining the light on us, like trying to find us, and we were just in this ditch. And then I remember walking and walking and walking, and there was like trees everywhere, and I remember this guy with a leather jacket, like he would take turns carrying my sister and I, so we wouldn't walk so much. And my mom tells us all the time, you guys were amazing little girls, like you guys just walked and walked and walked. And like never complained, never cried, which I was like, cool. I remember coming to this gas station, and then from there we got into a cab, and then from there I remember getting on this bus, and it was me, my grandma, my sister, my uncle, and I think that's it. We all were on this truck, and then I remember being stopped by the cops. Like, we got stopped by the cops, and they opened the door, the moving truck door, which lights up, and saying like, oh, just lighting the light on us, and just closing the door, and then they just let us go. And then I remember stopping in front of a house or an apartment or something, and I remember it was February because it was my father's birthday sometime, and that was it. That's all I remember. I grew up when I was little, we lived in Minneapolis. I went to Jefferson Elementary, and I was taught Spanish first as my first language. I learned to write, read, speak Spanish, and then my mom and my dad got a job in Plymouth, Minnesota. Plymouth, Minnesota, if anyone knows, it's a community of rich white people. Like, back in the day, there was no diversity. I remember being one of probably the only colored person in my class. Every time I did say I was from Mexico, they always like, oh, is it cool there? Or they would try to speak Spanish to me, and I'm like, you're trying too hard, stop. Let's see, and then it's just a bunch of white people. It's fairly a rich environment where I think, and this is where I'm going to classify myself, I think we're classified as middle class, but because we live in the suburbs, but we are the poorest ones here, so yeah. Then after Jefferson, we went to Oakwood Elementary. We had a big, huge issue there because I didn't know English as well. I didn't know how to write it or read it, so I would just translate everything that I wrote into English, like verbally. Then, yeah, that was hard. Then I went to Wayzata East Middle School. I was in ELL for a while. That was interesting. That's where I started seeing more people who were more diverse. I met Yvette, Jesus, Rodrigo, other people that were just like me and went to school and did all that. Then we went to Centro, which we learned more about our community, our Latin community, our Latin roots. Most of the people were there because of truancy. We were there because my mom wanted us to be more cultural, more identify more with what our culture was. That was hard because we would always get made fun of that we were whitewashed. Remember Oscar would always tell us, oh, you guys are so whitewashed. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I don't get why I'm less Mexican than you. I was born there, just like you were. So what's the issue? Anyway, we found it really hard to fit in. Then let's see. I went to Wayzata, and that's when I realized that I was more confused about myself. Like, where do I belong? Like, I knew I wasn't from Plymouth. Like, I didn't grow up in Plymouth. Like, I grew up in Plymouth, but like, it's not the same as being the outsider. Like, I hang out with these people and they're my friends, but I'm not like them because I don't have rich parents, or I don't have a boat. I don't have the things that Americans would consider your life, like goals, like for instance, like 16, you get your driver's license. I couldn't do that. My parents didn't have the money to like take us shopping every day, to go to the movies every day, to go out on vacation. We never did that, ever, or go to a camp, like during the summer. And that's when I got more bullied by this girl named Karina, who sadly she died, but she bullied me a lot. Like, she would call me names, especially in Spanish. She would call me Barbie. She would call me whitewashed. And that's when I got really confused. I'm like, why is it that I'm so different from my own people, but yet I feel like I'm different because of the color of my skin? Or like, even though my friends were like, you're like my best friend, or like, there's nothing wrong with you, I still felt like I wasn't part of their clique, and I also wasn't part of the Latin group in my school because they didn't like who I was. Like, we weren't taught to say bad words. We were taught to be respectful of everybody. Like, I think it was hard for my parents to give us the whole story of our culture and to show us that, because there was really much nothing to do in Plymouth. Like, there wasn't any of that in Plymouth, ever. Like, I mean, yeah, you had the ethnic groups and they would do festivals, but it's not the same with teaching your own kids, like, oh, this is your cultura, this is where you come from, like, because you usually see the Mexican hats and the Mexican hat dance and mole and guacamole and like chips and salsa, and you're just like, my parents were like, really? And then you have, anyway, so I was made fun of a lot, and I remember it got so bad where she almost punched me in my face, and I had to call my dad and tell him what was going on in school. And yeah, and then I remember the end of high school, I took preparing for college, because I really wanted to go to college, and that was the first time I ever told anybody I was undocumented, was my teacher. She gave us this assignment on turning in our FAFSA, and we had a grade for that. So like, everything had to do around college. It was college oriented and getting into college. And I told her I'm gonna fail your class because I can't apply for FAFSA. And she was really adamant, like, why can't you apply? I don't understand. And that's when I told her, I was like, I'm undocumented. And she didn't know what to do. Like, I remember telling her and then going home and crying to my mom. Like, why can't I go to college? It was really hard. But I'm so happy I found Miss Ledman because she went home that day and she came back with a bunch of information. She's like, you're gonna go to college. And I want to thank her so much because I'm finally done. I got my AA degree and I have my 4-year degree, and now I'm thinking of going to law school. Like, how amazing is that? Like, sometimes you just have to open up and just take the risk that that person's a good person and they're going to help you regardless. Well, I'll leave it at that for now, and then I'll come back before I leave. Bye, you guys. Thank you for watching, and hope you guys stay tuned. Bye.